Hello and welcome. Today we're gonna look into my Mortar script, how to set it up, how to implement it, how to edit some settings that you can mess around with. You can do quite a lot of different things with this script. For example, these units, you can place a static mortar on the map. You can add some code to the init line of the mortar, and then it's gonna run the script as the mission loads in, or rather as it has loaded in, and it will spawn a gunner on the side and type that you've selected, and with some specific orders. These, for example, have been told to just fire off at a marker position. All with a different type of firing mode. The four different firing modes that you have here is sporadic, which is pretty much just random firing in a rather big area. There is the barrage function, or rather barrage firing mode, which is it's gonna start firing a huge volley of mortars at one specific position. Somewhat inaccurate, and well, the inaccuracy can be set as well. The third would be the precise. It's a fair refire rate. It's not super quick, but it's decent pace on the mortars, and it's very accurate. And the last would be a guided mortar firing mode, where it's gonna fire around. When the round lands, it's gonna kind of wait a few seconds before it fires the next one to kind of simulate a spotter. And then the next round will be landing closer than the one before. And then it's gonna go closer and closer and closer until it's in the center, or pretty much in the center, and then it's gonna fire off the remaining rounds of that volley, so to say, in a rapid succession. Yeah, what you can also do is calling in off-map artillery. They're one shots, so you can, by using a trigger, you can call in a mortar strike on a specific position that you have to set up yourself, obviously, a marker or some XYZ coordinates. Yeah, that's the main thing you can, or the main thing about the script. So next we're gonna look into implementing the actual script. So I'm gonna hop off here, and we're gonna make the mission. I've made a test mission. We're gonna start this over from scratch, so I'm just gonna delete all this. Why not continue here? So there's gonna be a download link in the description. Once you've downloaded those files, you need to put them in your mission folder. This one, for example, is the one I'm gonna use, the test map. And then I tend to use a scripts folder. You don't need to if you don't want to, but I tend to, and then you place them in here. So you have two files, NeKy Mortars and NeKy Settings. We're gonna look into this one, the main file, first thing we do. And we're gonna go up to the top, and here we can see some documentation on how to use it and how to implement it. This is just an easy way to see what's supposed to be where. So the first thing we have is a mortar name, and then we have what side the unit's gonna be on, the firing mode within quotations, the type of rounds we're gonna use within quotations, the position in quotations. Unless it's XYZ, then it's gonna be an array inside. How inaccurate it's gonna be, the minimum range and the maximum range, and then obviously the path to the actual file. So if we look here, we can. Why don't we just start making one? I'll just do like this, and we'll make it together. So let's take this one for example. Alright, so the mortar name, the name of the mortar, we're gonna use the init line, so I can type this because that's gonna be the mortar. That's gonna be the mortar anyway. When you're placing it inside a init line, that is. The side you want the mortar to be assigned to, either blue for west, up for east, or independent. If you want it to be off map, it can be any side. Oh right, sorry about that. So we're gonna have a static mortar, right? The first thing we do. So let's spawn in a west or a blue 4, since I'm blue 4 as it is. Firing mode. What type of firing mode the mortar will be assigned to. So here you have a quick description of all of them. Something you can also enter in here is random, which means it's gonna randomly select one of the available firing modes. They can be defined in the NeKy settings later, so you can design what, if you want, like only sporadic and precise are gonna be available when randomly selecting firing modes, or if you want all 5 of them or not. But for now, let's use precise. Let's use precise. The type of rounds we're gonna use. Here you can. Sorry, I'm gonna read the usage file as it is. Round type. What type of rounds predefined in NeKy settings.sqf. So you can define the light, medium, heavy, smoke, and flare round types inside the settings file. We're going to look into that later, as I said. As it is by default, light is regular mortar rounds. Next, we're going to look into position and inaccuracy. The target position where mortars will hit and the inaccuracy of each round. So position can be X, Y, Z, or a marker name. That's if you predefine where the mortar will be firing at. But by typing auto, within quotations of course, instead of a marker or position, you will let the unit itself choose a target. So what it's going to do is going to scan its area, because later you're going to define the minimum and maximum range. So then it's going to scan the area, and if there's no enemies inside, it's going to do nothing. And when enemies to the unit or to the mortar comes into its range, within its maximum range, then it's going to start firing at these enemies by whatever firing mode you have selected. So I'm gonna go with auto, actually. And then inaccuracy, how inaccurate the round will be in meters. So if I type 30 there, then it's gonna, the inaccuracy is up to 30 meters from the center of the target, target position even. And then we have minimum range, the minimum range of the mortar. Ignore this if 5B is not set to auto. So minimum and maximum range is irrelevant if I would be using anything but auto in here. So let's set a minimum range. So the minimum range is there because I don't want, because you might want the ability to make it not shoot at itself if enemies would be really close. So I'm gonna type 100 meters there, so it's not gonna shoot itself. And then let's take 500. No. Let's take 800 meters. Since this can shoot all over the map if you so want to. And then we're gonna look into NeKy settings to tweak settings to your taste, or to my taste. We'll do that later. We're gonna do that later. We're gonna run default for now. And usage. For a manned mortar, place a static mortar and enter this code in the init of the mortar. See examples. You have a bunch of examples down here. And the code must start with null, because if you place it in a trigger, it has to. Manned mortars will continuously repeat the script until dead or unit has left the mortar, presuming it is set to auto. I'm going to add that later, sorry. So yeah, presuming it's set to auto, it's going to do that, otherwise it's going to one-shot. So let's give this piece of code a try, and then we're going to look into some more options. So first thing we do, we select units, double click, empty, static, and then we can select one of these mortars, and then we can paste this code, and we need to place null equals all that. Alright, so let's click OK. Let's save the mission, and let's preview. So there we have our mortar. It's gonna take 5 seconds for it to engage. This is mainly due to a template I'm using, otherwise that takes a little while to set up the units. So while in the editor, you're gonna get this text that the script is running, that it spawned the gunner, and the firing mode has been selected as precise, and it is scanning for enemies. So let's hop into Zeus. There's the bird. Alright, so we're there. Let's take some enemy units. And let's place them all the way over here. So now you can see the zone has been activated. And since the default setting is to mark the area with a precise strike, there's a red smoke in this position right now. Well, that can be adjusted later if wanted. And now it's going to start firing at that position, because shortly after the smoke has been deployed, it's going to start firing. So let's see if we can see any explosions of that. You can see the mortar is going to actually fire all these rounds. So we can just go over here now then. You can see the first one hit right there. Second would hit there. And where's the next gonna land? There. It's gonna keep bombing until it has fired its entire round, or its entire what should we call it? Barrage size. I don't know. Yeah, it's gonna keep going until a predefined number has been met. So we have now spawned in a mortar with the default settings. So let's jump back out here. Let's do this a little different then. What can we do? What can we do to change things? We could change that. There's no need to do that. I'll showcase all the different firing modes later. What we could do is actually do an off-map firing run. So if you want an off-map, no physical mortar, one-shot strike, type off-map. So if it's off-map, the side is irrelevant. You can just use whatever. And then you select what kind of firing, or rather what you want to happen. So let's showcase my smoke screen then. So let's select screen. This means the mortar will fire mortars in a line in rapid succession. Best use is an off-map smoke screen, yeah. And instead of a light round type, we're gonna use smoke. We're gonna select, I think this one is irrelevant, isn't it? Yeah, these are irrelevant since, hold on. Smoke, that one. Oh yeah, that's the position, sorry. Target, let's call it target. the inaccuracy. It's actually irrelevant when using the screen because it's a script. It's completely scripted because I want everything to land in a line. And these things are irrelevant because it's not set to auto. 5 is not set to auto, so the position is predefined. So let's use this piece of code here. Let's go in here, and we can leave you there. You're not harming anyone. So let's create a trigger, and let's say if T1 is true, or rather we can do this. When blue 4 unit is present, then activate this. Null that. So once I step into this, let's say there. So whenever I step there, it's gonna call in an off-map screen, a smoke screen on marker position target, and that one is actually irrelevant. Especially, or rather, that is mainly because I'm using a screen though, otherwise it is relevant. So let's create a marker, and let's call it target. Alright, so now, once I step inside that trigger, I'm gonna activate the script, and it's gonna pop a smoke screen at the target. Now, what you can do is, if you turn this marker, so it is facing northeast right now. You see that little bit here. It's facing northeast. That means the entire smoke screen is actually gonna start. The first shell is gonna land here. The first set of smokes are gonna land here, and then it's gonna move towards the northeast until the predefined number has been reached. So let's see if I actually managed to do this correctly. There we go. Let's see, while it's running in here, firing mode screen. Let's see, come on. There we go. It's a bit delayed. Alright, so as we can see, a smoke screen is starting to form. In the direction of northeast. And it is quite big as it is by default. Let's look at it from zoos. It's like, whoa. So yeah, you can probably hide quite a bit behind that smoke screen. Can use this to make AI units or yourself able to move up faster, or rather without being seen as well. So that's the smoke screen used as an off-map fire, or rather as an off-map yeah, whatever, you know what I mean. Alright, so now you know how to call in an off-map mortar strike or smoke screen in this case, doing any type of fire, or rather mortar strike is just the same, just change the parameters as we did with this one. And you know how to create a manned mortar that will continuously scan for enemies within its maximum range and fire at them. So the next thing we're gonna look into is the settings file. So as you said, you can mess around quite a bit. If we look into the settings file, which follows this mortar script, so open up that settings file. The first thing we can see here is general settings. So the travel time, the time it takes for a round to travel to its position, will always take a minimum of 2 seconds for the sound effect's sake. So this is how long it's going to take from when the mortar has fired to the mortar actually reaching its position and then going boom. You can change this to whatever. 15 by default, it's decent. I haven't finished tweaking this, but I found that to be decent so far. Avoid Avoid firing near friendlies. If friendlies are within the inaccuracy area, it will hold fire and rescan. So if it's true, then it's gonna avoid firing whatever mortar strike it's gonna do if friendlies are nearby. And here you have the avoid multiplier. If a unit is within inaccuracy zone times this multiplier, then it counts as too close. So if the inaccuracy that you have set in here, let's see here, over here by position and inaccuracy, let's see here, 5C, inaccuracy, how inaccurate the round's gonna be. So if I set it to 30 as I have, so then it's gonna be if a friendly unit is within the inaccuracy. Now all these firing modes have a different inaccuracy pretty much. There's a multiplier, for example, for the barrage firing mode. There's one for the sporadic, and there's one for the guided mortar firing mode, sorry. So presuming we're doing a precise strike, which has always the default inaccuracy, so 30 times 0.9 is going to be, if any friendlies are within 30 meters times 0.9, I don't know what that is right now, but if anyone is inside that area, whatever that would be, less than 30 meters at least, then it's not going to fire at that specific target. Then it's going to start scanning again, and with some luck grab an enemy unit that is further away from friendlies, or maybe the friendly has moved on or died, or if the enemy unit has died, so it can select another unit and so on. Next we have danger. Dismount the static weapon if an enemy unit is close. So if an enemy unit would come close to the mortar, the gunner would dismount and protect itself and the mortar position most likely. And here you have danger close, the range from which the unit will react to enemy forces and dismount the static weapon. So here you say if you want it to dismount or not if enemies are close, and here you can select how many meters these enemy units need to be within of that mortar before it's going to dismount. You can set it to lock the mortar if the gunner dies or leaves the mortar. This is to avoid other AI to take it and operate it as they see fit. So if you want to lock the mortar so no one can use it afterwards, then you can type true in there. And scan vehicles. When scanning for targets, count manned vehicles as targets. So if you have a blue for mortar and then you have an Ifrit or Punisher, I think they're called now, coming into your to the mortar's firing range. If you have scan vehicles true, then it's going to look at that vehicle and it's going to say, hey, an enemy vehicle, and then it's going to grab that position and it's going to start firing at it. I don't usually have this set to true, because if you do, it's very likely, depending on the scenario, that the mortar is going to grab the position and then the car has already moved on, which means that the mortar shells are going to be way behind, which is absolutely pointless. But the option is there. The little flaw of having it set to false is if you do take a vehicle somewhere, as soon as you dismount, it's going to take a few seconds, then it's going to notice that, aha, there are enemies here. Somewhat realistic in the sense that you wouldn't fire at a moving target, and if you see them stopping, you would. So yeah, that's that. And here you have the firing mode settings. So the precise firing mode, the size of it, you can see here there's an array 6, 8, 10, and then it will randomly select a number of mortars per precise rotation. So one rotation would be either 6, 8, or 10 in this example. So every time I run a precise strike mortar strike, then it will randomly select one of these three preset numbers. If you want to, you can just type 6, then it's always going to be 6. If you want it to be 10, 20, or 30, now it's going to randomly select 10, 20, or 30. You can add, you can keep going, you can have as many settings here as you want. That's something I have found to be quite decent so far. Precise reload time. This is how many seconds it's going to take for the mortar to prepare for another strike after performing a precise mortar strike. So after firing these 6, 8, or 10 shells, it's going to take 100 seconds before it's going to rescan for new targets and fire again. And then you have the same for the barrage size. And then you have the barrage reload time. And here you have something new, the barrage inaccuracy multiplier. How much more inaccurate the barrage will be compared to a precise strike. So if you have the inaccuracy set to 30, then it's going to take that inaccuracy and then it's going to multiply it by 1.75 for the barrage by default. And then it will be using that inaccuracy instead of the default 30 that I have, or rather the 30 that I have entered previously. So it's going to be more inaccurate. If you want it to be just as accurate, you just type 1. If you want it to be even more accurate than a precise strike, then you can type 0.5. But I find the barrage to prefer. It would be preferred if it is more inaccurate than a precise strike, because it's a very fast fire, or rather high fire rate on it. And then we have the same settings here again: the sporadic size, the size of the rotation, the reload time, the inaccuracy. We have the same for guided, and at the end we have screen size and screen reload time. It doesn't have an inaccuracy multiplier since it is scripted. The pathing of the screen is selected. Something I forgot to say before. I said that if you have a marker, it's going to use that direction. If you would be using X, Y, Z coordinates, it's gonna randomly select a direction. So if it has no direction, if it has just X, Y, Z coordinates, you have no direction thanks to using X, Y, Z. So it's gonna randomly select a direction between 0 and 360. So yeah, that's something to keep in mind. And here we have the class names for light, medium, heavy, smoke, and flare rounds. So by default, the 82mm shell, the medium is 120mm, and the heavy is a 155mm. That is actually a cluster bomb, if I remember correctly. So yeah, keep that in mind. You can just change these as you want to, if you want something else. If you maybe want 40mm instead, and just for fun. The smoke is 120mm because the mortar smoke, the 82mm smoke, is pretty much just a smoke grenade. Not very fancy. It's not good enough in my opinion. And here you have the flare, of course. Next we have day and night time. So here you can set, or sorry, I didn't set this. I can quickly show you that if we change the time to night, can load through, and as it's gonna spawn in, let's go back here. Let's create a few units. Oh, sorry. Now zone has been activated, and as I said, this firing mode is marking its target position before it's firing, and by default at least. So since it's nighttime, it's not going to use a smoke grenade, it's going to use a flare instead, because a smoke grenade is not very visible in daytime. And the other way around, oh sorry, smokes are not very visible in nighttime, and flares are not very visible in daytime. So yeah, that's just for marking. And what was I going for? Yeah. So depending on what map you are, and I think actually what time of year it is, it's the night, or rather the day and night times are different. So here you can set the sunrise, the time it gets bright enough for smokes to be used instead of flares. So I have 4 AM there. And sunset when it gets dark enough to start using flares. So yeah, just modify that after what you think is preferable. And here we have the crew for the mortar gunners. There is one for blue 4, one for up 4, and one for independent, depending on which one you want. You can have as many units you want in this array. So it will randomly select one of the units in the array. So for example, while I'm at it, I can show you to get these names. If you don't know how to get these class names of a unit, just walk into the editor, select units, double click, select a faction, and let's go blue 4. And men, and let's try pilots, just because they look very different. So up here you can see B_pilot_F. That is the class name of the unit. So let's go back in here, add a comma, quotation, and pilot. So if we save this, we go into the editor, and we copy paste this one a few times. And we can move myself over there. Oh, let's change it to daytime. I forgot you could click there. Save, preview. So now we should have some pilots in these mortar seats as well. It's a 50-50 chance it's a pilot or a regular soldier. Let's see what we get. We get 3 pilots. Damn. So yeah, you can have as many as you want, and it will randomly select in that in that array. Yeah. What else do we have? Let's remove that one because that's not preferred. I don't want pilots, not there. Next we have marking and sound effects. So this first one is if we want marking to, or rather certain firing modes to be used, marking for certain firing modes should be used. If marking should be used on firing modes sporadic, precise, barrage, guided, screen, true or false. So the first one, false, is for sporadic. So by default, sporadic fire, the fire mode sporadic does not mark its area that it's going to be firing at. Next you see true, the second one here, that would be precise. So every precise firing mode will be using, will mark its target position by either a flare or smoke grenade. Next you have barrage, next you have guided, and last you have screen. Keep in mind that if you are using smokes or flares instead of heavy, medium, light, it's not gonna mark the position, because obviously if you're gonna, you wouldn't mark a position for a smoke screen with a smoke. That's this is weird. Next we have sound on. So if you noticed, the mortar had a little whistle effect before it hit the ground. It's actually not there by default for the 82mm, so that's manually added. So here you have if sound effect should be applied to mortar round when incoming. So we have light. Every light round will have a sound effect going off. Medium will not, heavy will not, and smoke will not. And you don't even have an option for the flare, I'm sorry. Next we have sound types. So the sound effects used by using Say 3D. So for anyone who knows how to use that, you need to know that it's Say 3D that it's using. So you get the correct string, or rather name, for the sound effect. So the first one is light. The light will be using the sound effect Mortar 1. Medium has none by default, heavy has none by default, and smoke has none by default. Next we have the mark smoke. That's what smoke, shell, or grenade should be used for marking an area. And then you have the flare. When you're marking the area with a flare, that's the flare type flare that would be used. And lastly, we have the random firing mode. These are the firing modes that will be randomly selected if firing mode is random. So by default, it's gonna randomly select between sporadic, precise, barrage, or guided. One of these firing modes. If you want to remove one, for example guided, just remove all that. Now it's only gonna randomly select between the three of those. If you want to make it more likely that a guided strike would occur, or firing mode would be selected, then you can just type it multiple times. Now it's 3 times as likely. It's pretty much 50% chance that a guided strike would occur. And yeah. Alright, so now we're gonna showcase the different firing modes. The first one we're gonna look at is sporadic. The sporadic firing mode is best used for kind of random mortar strikes. When you're not sure when you're not sure where the enemy is, and if in very open ground, open areas. So for example, woods are a very good place to use these sporadic firing mode, as no one will have a clue of where the next mortar is going to land, except for in the vicinity. And of course you get no heads up, you just start hearing the mortars. Now it looks like most of these units can make it through, depending on where the next shell is landing. All the way over here, so you can see the rounds are very spread out. And if any units had been here, if the strike here would have been more better timed, then it would have been very, very dangerous for all these guys. We have a few guys moving here. They probably will make it, because most the strike should be over now. Oh no, there we go. Oh, that's close. So yeah, you have a lot of mortars landing all over the place. And we didn't kill anyone, but you get the point. That's all the mortars for that. No, there was one more sporadic round. Alright, the script ends a bit earlier than the shelling does. My bad. But still, no kills. They all managed just fine. But yeah, you can see why the sporadic firing mode is best used for forests and open ground. The next one we're gonna look into is, let's see here, the precise firing mode. So let's set up the next one. So by default, it starts off by marking the area it's gonna bomb. So we actually have a kind of glitched hunter there. Let's see if that makes anything interesting. But now we have a precise bomber run incoming. It's aimed towards this building here, I believe. I'm not gonna swear, but it's one of these two buildings, I'm sure. We're gonna see when the shelling starts. Oh, yeah, I was sort of expecting that one to move. So a precise bombing run, sorry, mortar strike. It works for open ground quite well. If the units would be holding for whatever reason, if they would not know this mark would come up, then the precise firing mode is very good. It's very good for smaller compounds, fortifications. It's quite decent for that. See, that's that building. That military HQ is now down. It's quite good. It's not absolutely. It's not completely. What's the word I'm looking for? Overpowered. But yeah, it is very effective. It's very powerful still, but it is mortars, so we're not going to expect anything else. And let's look into the next one. You can see the shells are fairly close to this area here, so you can see that it's been marked for this building, surely. Next, let's jump to target 3. Let's show off the barrage. So here we have a factory. Now we're gonna show off the barrage. It should be marking as well by default. Yeah, there you have the smoke. It's coming from the sky, slightly from above. Lands in the compound, marks the area. And the barrage has slightly more, it's a bit more spread out than the precise one, so this is going to be a bit bigger. It's probably going to cover like 70% of this compound, and it's going to be more spread out, but it's going to be very, very rapid. So first, second, okay, we pretty much have the outlining of the area now, don't we? Alright, so this one is quite scary to experience. A lot of mortars in a very short period of time. But as I said, if you hole up in a building, you're going to be quite fine, as the rounds are fairly spread out. Now let's jump to the fourth one. This one is very strong for fortifications, and if you'd hole up in a building, that's no good. So what I've placed, oh wow, they parked a hunter there. Okay, cool. I just used the site module, kind of lazy, sorry. So now we don't have any units in here. I was expecting units to be in there, but I suppose not. Anyhow, let's pretend you were holding up in this building, and a guided bomber. Why am I saying bomber run? A guided mortar strike would be sent for this building. Now it's a very low chance that the first round is going to be on target, so I'm not going to be surprised if the first one does. No, it's not. It's way inaccurate. Alright, so the next shell, as you notice, it's quite a lot of time in between the shells, but the next shell is going to be more accurate. It's not gonna move in from that position, but it's going to be more accurate than the first one. Alright, so you see, it's closer. It's way closer. That distance compared to this distance. So it's closer, and now it's going to be even closer than this. Let's see where this one lands. Oh, now we're getting really close, really close. So let's see if that's actually within the acceptable distance before it starts unloading the remaining shells. If so, you're going to notice they're coming in rapidly. Oh yeah. So this is within the agreed position. So now it's going to drop rounds very, very quickly and very accurately on this position. So that building is a no-go by now. Well, you could get lucky, but as you see, the building is already destroyed. The first 1-2 rounds were very inaccurate. The third was accurate. The remaining kind of barrage was very accurate. So that's a very terrifying thing to see. This one does not mark before it fires because it's using the first mortar and the remaining of the mortars to sort of guide it in. The last firing mode is the screen. When I showed you the smoke screen, I don't see it being very useful other than smoke screens, but here it is. If you might have some ideas that I don't. I recall this one actually marking. No, I might be wrong. It looks like I'm wrong. Yeah, here we go. So as I said, this is scripted, so it goes in a predetermined path. It goes fairly straight. It's not 100% straight, but it's kinda straight. It's not very inaccurate. And as I said, it avoids any inaccuracy parameters that you might have filled in. But it's it might be fun to use. Might be scary if you're over there and you hear the first mortar. You might be a bit surprised, since they come in rather quickly. Getting up and running is very dangerous as well, considering shrapnel-ish stuff. So yes, that's all the firing modes, and that brings us to the end of this tutorial. Hopefully you are gonna find it helpful, and hopefully you're gonna enjoy the scripts. Thanks for watching, and let me know if there's anything you need, if you have any ideas or any feedback for this stuff. So yeah, enjoy.